Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. It's my birthday today, and that means we get to just relax a little bit. I'm going to be streaming later and just kind of having a good time, playing a bit of War Thunder, and then also playing some other stuff. But one of the things I wanted to talk about, at least on YouTube today, was some birthday wishes. These are things that I would love to see in War Thunder at some point in the future. This is not all the stuff that I'd like to see, but this is more of like my personal wants, is probably the way to put it. A lot of people have a lot of things that they want to see, whether it's in terms of vehicles or whether it's in terms of mechanics. For me, it's much more on the mechanic side of things than it is on the vehicle side of things. There are some vehicles I'd like to see, of course, just like everybody, but I prefer the game to focus on some of the other elements, especially since there's so many vehicles in the game already. Now, there are some things that I would love to see that have already been announced. Stuff like the fact that they're going to bring in a research bonus if you have research-specific vehicles in a tech tree for other nations. I think generally that's quite nice. I'd also just like to see a way of being able to research coastal vehicles with blue water vehicles and also vice versa, just like the helicopter setup. I think that would be super powerful for it as well. Research is one of those key things for me which has to be looked at. It was looked at quite a lot last year, but at this time we have 2,000 vehicles in the game, and I feel like a lot of people don't even touch 90% of those vehicles. So I think it's time to try and improve that, whether it's through discounts, whether it's through bonuses for researching specific nations, or whether it's just through a nation bonus set per week. Now, you have a bunch of nations in the game, including sub-nations. What they could do every week is they could have a different set of bonuses for each of those nations. So, for example, for Japan, maybe one week you get a 5% research bonus for it. Maybe for Sweden, you get a 5% research bonus for it. Something as simple as that, just to get people to broaden their horizons, to widen their wings, so they can give other vehicles a go. And to also help with this, something that I've been running into a lot the last week or so, and also ran into for many years, is the fact that a lot of vehicles, when they're not fully researched, or even close to fully researched, they feel absolutely awful. So, over the last week or so, just to give you some examples. The F-86F2, the ME-262 C2B, and also the MiG-21 BIS. All three of these vehicles are pretty bad until you get them 40 or 50% researched, when you get the engine modifications, when you get some of the kind of offensive weaponry modifications, they start becoming an actual vehicle. And I'm very bored of this. I'm very bored of the fact that half the time I play a vehicle, it is in a negative state. So what I'd like to introduce is some kind of BR by modification. The fact that we have now in-game different BRs for aviation, based on what game mode they're in, shows me that anything is possible, since that was one of the parts which was talked about for many years to not really be possible with how the game is set up. Well, when it comes to the next stage of this, it would be, of course, battle rating by modification, meaning that certain vehicles, when they don't have access to certain modifications, would be lower in BR compared to their spaded selves. And I think overall this would be a huge bonus for many different vehicles, especially ones which heavily rely on their weaponry. When I have a look at something like the Q5L, the Jaguar GR1A, or even many of the high BR aircraft, but also ground vehicles and naval vehicles, one of the big issues they have is shells or offensive armament, and also just general speed a lot of the time to be able to get access to the battle. If you have a setup where you have BRs based on modification, meaning that if you have specific modifications researched and also modified, that means you'll be able to be at a higher BR bracket, but if you're in a stock setup, then you'll be at a lower one. It would be fantastic. To give you the most extreme example of this, you can have a look at the Israelis. Israel, from basically 8.0 with the Magak 6A and the Magak 5, then you can have a look at all of the Magak 6s that are at 8.7, and then even the Magak 6C that is up at 9.3, or even the 6B GAL, which is at 9.3.2. All of these vehicles, before you get any of the modifications, so in their stock configuration, are basically the same. And they differ in BR by, what, 4 BR brackets, which is just nuts. And that means that every time you play a new one of these, the stock experience gets worse, because you are at a higher BR, even though you have the same performance. It sucks. It's not fun. It's not enjoyable. It's really, really bad. And I'm bored of doing it. And I'm sure many other people are pretty much bored of doing it too. The only difference between these vehicles is access to a stabilizer. So even if you want to say that, you know, the stabilizer is a huge thing, which is fair enough, for a lot of people it is, how about the MAGAC 6A, sorry, not the MAGAC 6A, how about the standard MAGAC 6R all the way to the MAGAC 6B GAL? So that's 3 BR brackets where all of these vehicles play exactly the same stock. It sucks, it's not fun, and basically you are just relying on getting not even mobility stuff, because the mobility gets worse as you go through the rounds that you get access to. It just sucks. So hopefully they can start working on that. Prestige mode, pretty simple. A lot of us have been level 100 for a long time, and since the game gets older and older, there will be more and more time where you'll have more and more people who are level 100. Level 100 is a nice goal to hit, and, you know, I'm sure it's one of those things for many people to go for. But I am probably at 8 years at this point where I've been at level 100. So the fact is, it would be really cool if we could do something with that. You know, if there was an ability to reset it, maybe get some decals out of it, or maybe even just some research bonuses, and once again go back to level 1 and then go through it again. And maybe you could get a little banner for your profile, maybe it could just be a bronze, silver, gold deal, and it would just mean that you have something to focus on. They are doing a bunch of profile improvements over the next little bit, and I'm super looking forward to what that looks like, and hopefully that would be part of it. As I said, doesn't have to be anything crazy. You don't need new vehicles, you don't need anything tied behind it, which is more, you know, basically giving veterans more power. It's just something alongside of what we've already seen. The other part of that would also be hangar decorations. So hangar decorations come in kind of like two forms for me. The first one is getting something in your hangar to show you that you've done events in the past. So for example, you could have an area in the hangar which is similar to the ground hangar, where you have the tent on the left side of the hangar as you're looking into it. That tent there could easily have a bunch of flags in it or a bunch of posts in it, and if you go to those posts, it gives you a list of the events that you've completed and also a list of the different, I don't know, even like tournaments you've competed in, or different stuff that's gone through War Thunder history, right? And the fact is, all of these things are monitored, because if you have a look at a lot of the event vehicles, it will actually say where those event vehicles were from. For example, the M64, it says the event vehicle, the Battle Pass Firepower. So all of these tell you which event they're from. So if the people have those vehicles and, you know, they were playing at that time of the event, obviously they could get a decoration. This would just be in the form of a pendant or a flag or even just a piece of text, as I said, on a board. One of the cool things that we had at our school, which I thought was really fun, was we had a bunch of huge kind of like wooden boards which were around the hall. One of them showed the kind of, one of them showed like head boy and then head girl and over the years, and then other ones showed sporting achievements and also academic achievements. So if you did really well at something and did really good, then that basically meant that you got your name up on the board. And I thought that was pretty awesome, and it would be cool to have something similar in War Thunder, not just for individual players, but also squadron achievements, basically tying people more into what's kind of going on. Then the Warbond stuff. So Warbonds are great. I like them as an additional system. There are things I would improve. Number one, we need to start actually getting higher rank vehicles for premiums. And I know this is something where it's complaining about getting something for free, and that's fine. You know, it's at the end of the day, it is something that is free, and that is good, but we've been stuck on rank 2 and rank 3 premiums in the Warbond shop forever. Since the game only had like 5 or 6 ranks, those have been the Warbond vehicles, probably 6 ranks. We are now up to rank 8, so a rank 3 premium is still useful for dailies and specials, but it is completely worthless at grinding up those higher BRs. A rank 2 vehicle is useless in terms of the second daily and the special and even events, meaning that it can give you a kickstart to a tech tree, but that's really about it. So it's time to at least modify those, try and get a few more in, even if they're more expensive, even if you have to increase the maximum amount of balance that Warbonds can hold, that should be something that's focused on. The other part would be making it so the decoration box for the leaves is there every battle pass instead of interchangeably. There's no reason to have it interchangeably. They also should have a box in which can discount modifications on a vehicle. It could do it randomly, or you could pick the modifications that you want discounted. The other thing is free modifications for a vehicle. We saw through some events this year that they were able to do that, where you could basically open a box which would give you some free modifications. No reason why that couldn't be added to the Warbond shop too as a addition. And then also a way to get old vehicles in the Warbond shop, whether it is once again just through a box of old vehicles that are not available anymore in any way, shape or form. So like the Year 2M TAT or the SP2M or any of these types of vehicles that were removed, or old Battle Pass vehicles or anything like that. I still like the idea of a Warbond craft setup. So what you do is you purchase a blueprint in the Warbond shop itself. When you purchase the blueprint, it opens the workshop tab for that blueprint itself, and then you can get to work on crafting the vehicle through doing specific challenges. If you complete the challenges, you get access to the components. Once you get all the components, you put them together, and hey presto, you get the vehicle. They could easily do one each battle pass. There are 4 battle passes a year. That's 4 event vehicles or 4 standard vehicles. They could even be just copy-paste of vehicles, but with additional decorations or something. There you go. It uses an old system, and it brings in new mechanics. For me, I think that would be pretty cool. Then, the test drive itself. Customizer time. There has to be some kind of customizer for the test drive. I know people have talked about the idea of getting like a cross-out style where when you go into test drive, it just takes you straight into the test drive with, you know, a pretty cool setup. For me, I'm not really too bothered by that. I would just like a setting set where I can control what vehicles I shoot at in the test drive, or what vehicles are moving around in the test drive. Because right now, you go up against a bunch of standard vehicles, which is great. But if I'm playing a vehicle which isn't going to face most of those vehicles at that BR range, there's not really a lot of testing that I need to do, right? It doesn't really work. So it would be much better if they added a bit of customizability to the test drive, so therefore people could put it towards their own preferences. I think overall that would be very nice. Another thing for the hangar as well is a first-person walk around. They demonstrated this, I believe, in a Christmas setup where you could see a bunch of the Christmas decorations in all 3 of the different areas. You had to just click on a guy who was sat there and you could wander around, and it was fantastic. I'm sure it'll lead to a bunch of bugs, and I'm sure it will lead to a bunch of ridiculous things, but also at the same time, it's just another way of appreciating what War Thunder is, which is not just a military game, it's also a historical game, and at the same time, it's just a beautiful game. One of the things that they actually did while kind of advertising the new War Thunder game that they're making for PlayStation VR was the idea of walking around vehicles and seeing all of their insides and going around them. And as somebody who's enjoyed Tank Mechanic Simulator, enjoyed Plane Mechanic Simulator, I understand why people like that, because it's just super fun to be able to do it. Talking about more personal customization, avatars. Avatars for pilots, for tankers and for sailors. You don't need an avatar for each vehicle. You don't need a set of crew for each vehicle. What you need is a symbol that represents your command of those vehicles. Whether it is a pilot for your planes or a tank commander for your tanks. And this would mean that you could open up more customization. You could open up the idea that you can, change the clothes of the person, change the face of the person, basically make it your own. Even maybe give it certain emojis or animations and things like that. And at the end of a battle, when you have the battle screen, and maybe if you've done well, maybe at the top of it, it can actually honor you, just like it does in Enlisted or other games. So you can get most assists, most kills, most score, things like that, and you could get bonuses towards research for doing those specific things, and also at the same time have your avatar turn up. So there is a reason to do it, not just for personal gratification, but also to show other people. And I think in general that would be fantastic. That would be super fun to see, and hopefully we can see more of that in the future, since it's been one of those things that's been around for a long time for many games. It's time for War Thunder to embrace it too. Then grindable physical camouflages. This one is something that I was worried was only going to be premium vehicles, because that's all we saw. Stuff like the Leopard 2A4, for example, the M1 KVT, but with the recent addition of the Vextra showing that these things can also come on standard vehicles, why not make them instead of a modification? But you can make them a modification if you want to, but why not make them an addition on top of the customization level? So you know how you can grind out different camos for different planes or tanks or naval vehicles, whether it's amount of damage you've done, kills or whatever, or even tonnage dropped for certain bombers. Why not make an additional level where you can get some additional decorations to something, and then start adding some decorations to planes? It doesn't have to be exterior, it can be interior. Imagine interior decorations for a cockpit. You could have pictures, you could have medals, you could have a bunch of different things that just turn around and be there. And I think that would be super fun to see, and you could, as I said, make the grindable thing for different stuff. It doesn't have to even be that different for each vehicle. If you want to go the medal system for planes, you could just keep the same medal one for each of the areas, right? I also like the idea of gun marks, the ones that they have in World of Tanks, where you can, get a bunch of gun marks for a vehicle to kind of show your prestige in a vehicle to other players and also yourself. Something to grind on top of the ace and also the expert idea, showing that you have mastered a vehicle in a way that some other people haven't. The other part is unique voice lines. So this kind of fits into battle passes, but could also be for events or just in general. I like the idea of each battle pass or each event having their own voice line, right? Kind of like with the naval flags nowadays, where each naval event has its own like flag decoration with it. I would like the flag decorations also to be put in the battle passes, by the way. But the idea of having something tied to it. You have the title of the battle pass, which is always nice, but it's at level 150 and most people are not going to get access to it. So Tiger from the North is what it's called. Imagine if you got a unique voice line from that battle pass, which also at the same time said that, right? So every time you spawn the Kung's Tiger, it goes Tiger in the North, rolling in, or something like that, right? Just something as simple as that. So it just makes your vehicle a little bit more unique, and it makes you want to play it a bit more. Then you could have a wheel of general voice lines that are used by a bunch of your vehicles. So what you can end up doing is chopping and changing which ones you want to see in the game and make your experience more customizable. Nowadays, we have so many more voice lines than we did before, and they are fantastic. It is absolutely wonderful, but the customization part is the bit that's lacking. And after taking a very long time to get a bunch of voice lines into the game, it would be cool if we could have individual ones that you could chop and change depending on what events you've completed and also done. Another part is modifications just not being as effective as they are now. right? We talked about the BR by modification earlier, but one of the other problems is modifications are a pain, right? The fact is there are so many vehicles in the game that you have to get to very high levels in order for them to feel right. As we talked about with the Israeli Magax, the shots are the same, but there are numerous examples of this across the board. Some vehicles feel pretty fine stock, other ones are absolutely heinous and hideous, and many of them unfortunately are jets and also high-tier ground vehicles. Now, instead, as an example, to try and show you what I mean by reducing the impact of modifications, imagine you are playing a high-tier MBT, let's say the Type 90, right? The Type 90B is one that I'm kind of spading through. The Type 90B has access to Heat FS, stock, and you have to get to a rank 3 modification in order to get the APFS DS on the Type 90. Imagine if you instead got some of that APFS DS stock, but you only got like 5 rounds. So 5 rounds every time you go into a battle, you have the JM33. Then after that, you have to use the Heat FS. But it at least gives you the option, and it lowers the impact of that modification. So for me, that would be huge. Just minimizing the effect of modifications, but also making it that a lot of these vehicles at higher BRs have access to the rounds they're supposed to have access to from the start. Or even just a lesser round, which is what a lot of other nations do. Or, as I said, just flipping the script and making it so a lot of modifications don't give you things that are essential. They actually kind of learnt this for the rank 8 vehicles, but it was more of just a marketing thing to try and get you to play rank 8 vehicles, where rank 8 vehicles they actually gave stock APFS DS, like the Charger 3 TD they gave stock the M33. Why can't this happen to all of the vehicles? And if it can't, why can't you have a maximum amount of rounds? So as I said, like you get 5 rounds before you unlock the modification, and then after you unlock the modification, you get more of them. You actually see this in aviation with a lot of missiles, where you'll start off, for example, on the MiG-21 BIS with 2 R60Ms, and then when you get the modification, you get 4. I don't see why this is not spread out across the way for naval as well, because naval is one of those areas where if you're dealing with stock heat and you're just throwing it at battleships, good luck. I hope you enjoy watching fires, because you won't be able to do anything else. Then community map competitions. Community map compositions have been one of those things we've talked about for a long time. It doesn't necessarily mean that the maps have to get included into the game. That's one of the things that has to be brought in. But I would like to see a full set of competitions based around people making some of the coolest maps that they can. Back in the day, there was a bunch of people who would make some really awesome maps. One of them was called Boris the Blade. If you look at him on War Thunder Live, you will find some amazing hangars and also just amazing maps from the game. It would be so cool to see a reinvigoration of a lot of these ideas and to try and get more of a community map setup. Looking at stuff like CS2 and CSGO or just general Counter-Strike, one of the big things that was kind of the foundation of Counter-Strike was community maps and also community-made content. With War Thunder, we have a lot of community-made content in the game too, but I feel like it could be expanded, and one of the ways to do it is through competitions. Also, old event vehicles, not old event vehicles, old events that people bring up a lot. So, for example, if you are thinking about Era BEC or World War II Chronicles or even maybe crafting events, but I don't know who's thinking of those. But any of these like old events, whether it be like PvE or PvE, what they should do is they should just stick them on a rotisserie and put them in the events tab every weekend. So each weekend you get a different event that happens, and therefore we can just stop talking about it and move on from them. I think that's probably the best way of doing it, so therefore people can have a much better time and they can play what they say that they want to play. And it also doesn't affect the standard matchmaking because there aren't any prizes for it, and also at the same time it means that the people who really are dedicated to these modes will play the modes. You just create a rotisserie or a rotator, or whatever you want to call it. For some reason I have rotisserie chicken on the head. But that's basically what you can do, right? So just set that up. Then the next one is bringing back to remove vehicles for free RP. I don't know about you, but in the game I have over 200 million convertible research points. They're sat there. I understand the point of them. They are there to be able to use to GE vehicles. I get it, right? I'm never going to use it for that, because that's just not what I do. So right now, my 217 million research points are doing absolutely nothing. I can't put them into anything. What I would like to do as a part of the game is, once you finish a tech tree, once you are at the top of the tech tree, you get access to the vehicles that they've removed. No matter what state that they're in, whether it's the Year 2M Tats, whether it's the SB2Ms, whether it's the Italian vehicles in the German tech tree, whether it's stuff like the Tiger 2 105 or the Panther 2, if you complete that nation, so Army, helicopters, aviation, coastal, blue water, all of that, you get them all done, you can then research those vehicles that were removed. So give people an option on top of what they're already doing, and to use that convertible research points that they've got to grind through that tree to get access to it. And if you're worried about too many people doing that, there are not a lot of people who have ground out even one nation all the way. And I don't mean like spaded vehicles, I just mean research the vehicles. And also, that part of it can be changed, but that would be my general setup. I feel like a person would have to prove that they want those vehicles, and the way to do it is to get access to all of the other ones. So that would be something that I would like to see. The other one is nation bonuses per week. So you could have a rolling system, you could have it based on stuff like Pages of History, you could have something like this. But the idea is promoting smaller nations for people to play. And the way to do this would be through percentage RP bonuses. Because SL right now, at least for me and many others, isn't really an issue. But RP is the issue, right? It takes a long time to grind through a lot of these things, and since there are many nations in the game, and they're probably going to add more, it's going to be very daunting for people which are looking at new nations. So instead, what you say is per week, you have a different nation which gets some RP bonuses. So for example, let's say next week there's like an Italian event going on. Or how about Germany next week, since the Euros are going on, they get a 3% or a 5% RP bonus for everything you do in that nation. How about the next week, if there is like another thing going on, how about you get a 3 to 5% RP increase in everything Japan? So the idea is you have these rolling nation bonuses to try and promote people playing different nations instead of getting stuck in the same nation. Now, for the longest time, I was worried about this idea because I thought it would tailor people to only play specific nations and it would screw the matchmaker. But since I've got older and realized that there is so much stuff nowadays happening in War Thunder, it is impossible to even keep a hold or even understand when it comes to like the meta stuff and what people are playing at a time and how it changes basically every week or every 2 weeks. Stuff like that doesn't matter anymore. And what matters is people getting access to as many experiences as possible. That to me is important. And then the last one out of all of them is grindable discounts on vehicles. It's all well and good throwing random discounts at you through the special bonuses, or just throwing random stuff at you as it goes around, right? One of the cool things I really liked last year is they did a set of specials around some Soviet vehicles, and they based it around weird memes, which were just very odd at the end of the day. And I think for me, one of the most important parts of that setup was when they gave you access to buying the vehicle, there was a discount on it. But if you already had the vehicle, So for example, the T-34E was one of these vehicles. You could actually grind out the additional stuff from the package that they were talking about. So if you bought the package, you got access to a profile picture, you got access to, I think it was like a title and then a decal, and also the vehicle itself, at a discounted rate, by the way, compared to what it was before. But what you could do, if you already had the vehicle, is you could grind out all those additional stuff and you could get access to them. What if you have a setup where a vehicle is on offer, an old vehicle, doesn't have to be a new one, because obviously they want to get people to pay full price, but what about old vehicles which, you know, were removed from sale, you bring them back, and you go, okay, if you want to purchase them, you can purchase them for full price, but if you grind out this tech tree, or if you grind out this amount of mission score, this amount of RP, and this specific amount of time, you can get a discount on the vehicle. So therefore it incentivizes people to play the game, and also incentivizes people who probably won't buy the vehicle because it's too expensive, especially the returning premiums that they do. A lot of those are crazy expensive for what they are, and rely on FOMO for people to pick them up. Why not have it so people can grind to reduce the cost? It's a win-win, and it makes sense for all parties. So hopefully it can be done. That is pretty much all of the ideas, at least that I would like implemented for the birthday. And at the same time, there are a few vehicles that would be nice, you know, the Mosquito bombers, the Whitworth Whitley, the Victor, the Defiant, and of course the Skua. But there are many other vehicles that will be fantastic to see. Hopefully we see more in the future, and hopefully we see some more implementations to try and help many people get through many of these tech trees. Look after yourself, peace be with you, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank GMG Smiley, CD Beans, Chieftain Mike, EMN3 Galaxy, Tulio Pontecorvo, Brendan Quinn, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Ozzy Panzer, Alan Hacker, Liam Shear, Opium Prime, Lafouche, Sem, Aslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.